Welcome in, and Russ. Let's do this right now on the count of three. We'll go 1, 2, and that's what this episode's going to be about. It's not going to be a tearjerker. I thought you put good words on it, Russ. It's going to be a vent session, and if you know Russ Dog's on the podcast, we're talking heavy baseball, heavy White Sox. We said we'd do a podcast at the end of each month of the season, and it's been so brutal that it's July, mid-July almost, and this is when we're doing the podcast. But for all the White Sox fans out there, this is for you. This is a therapy vent session, trying to fix the team. But Russ, we're fucked. 16 games under 500. It's not good.
Nick, we're fucked. And I'll be honest, I was thinking about what I wanted to say when I got on, and I was like, I want to start with something positive. And I was going to come on, and I was going to talk about Luis Robert and how amazing it's been. And, we should probably talk about that for a little bit. And then it comes out that Luis Robert is hurt today. And it is just the most White Sox thing ever that he would get hurt at the Home Run Derby. So I want to start with the one little bit of positive I can find. Gregory Santos and Chris Middleton have been really good. That's been kind of cool. Since Robert got benched, he's actually been awesome. Since Grifol had that talking to him after he didn't run to first, and I had my whole thing with him where I'm like, fuck that guy, blah, blah. He's turned it around. He's 25. He's 25, right? Yeah, 25, 26.
He's 25, 26, and this is what we expected when we signed him. It feels like forever ago now. Coming out of Cuba, he's living up to the hype. Those two relievers are as well, Middleton and Santos. And you know what the crazy part is about them, Russ? You didn't have to pay them very much.
Crazy. The positives are over. Boom.
And we're done. It's this team. It's sad because this has been my process so far this year. I got to the point where last year we were both pissed off. It's like you didn't make the right moves in the offseason. You kind of ran it back, which is okay. And then the same shit happened. The same players got hurt. People playing through injuries didn't work out, and you finished 82 and 82. But the way they did it was just a bad taste in your mouth. You had a chance to win 2 out of 3 or sweep Cleveland. You're in first. Then you kind of control your own destiny for the rest of April or rest of September. You didn't. And the Guardians win the division with nobody besides a few pitchers and some fucking young guys. And now, by mid-April this year, I was just numb. And it's been going in and out of being so pissed off. You're seeing red, and that's where I'm at today, which I'm glad. Because going into this, I was kind of numb. And now today just kind of brought that in. How have you been with this team? Because I've never experienced this with this team.
Yeah. I'm at pure apathy at this point. By the way, Keenan Middleton, not Chris Middleton. I just want to correct myself there.
Good point.
Yeah. Where am I at now? I joked about this with you early in the season, but it really is true. Now I'm watching this team as a comedy and not a tragedy, because that's the only way that I can get through these games at this point is to just laugh. I mean, just to be more specific, I was at the Cardinals game on Sunday where the Cardinals are literally trying to give the game away to the White Sox by making 3 errors, and the White Sox still couldn't win the game and take advantage of other teams' mistakes. So I quite literally laugh out loud consistently while watching the games. I can't bring myself to even get angry anymore. I'm just sad more than anything. Like, they've truly broken my baseball emotional spirit, if you will. And I pretty much, you know what it is, overarching more than anything, is I feel stupid. I feel stupid for ever believing that there was a winning window here. Because you could argue that the window was open in 2021 and now it's been shut so quickly, and it's just so not what we were promised as a fan base. Rick Hahn talked about multiple championships, and, this team can't win a playoff series and is 16 games below 500 during their quote unquote winning window. So it's sad more than anything. It really is. And I feel terrible for White Sox fans. That's it more than anything.
And that's the thing, and that's what I wanted to bring up to start this podcast. Unless you're from Chicago, you don't understand, or like from Illinois, really. Being a White Sox fan, and this is why we're so frustrated and just at this point, is just different. Like, especially for us, I would call us two homer White Sox fans. Like, and I say this to my friends, and we talk about it on the podcast a lot. Like, my one buddy is a homer Blackhawks fan. Like, that's his number one team. Like, one buddy's a Bears, one buddy's a Bull. Like, that the White Sox are our team, but it's just different. Like, if you go to a Sox game to any other sporting event in Chicago, there's more authenticity and realness and authenticity, I guess is the word I'm looking for, than compared to if you go to a Bulls game, which can kind of be a corporate event. A Blackhawks is for sure a corporate event at times. Bears games, 1,000. You've been to plenty of Bears games over the past year or two. I mean, they're good. It's just there's something different about that White Sox crowd, that White Sox energy, walking into that ballpark, smelling the great food. And then you have generations of fans, your parents, grandparents, mine. It's different, dude. It's on every day. Like, that's what we talk about in the summer. Like, that's what my summer revolves around. And it's so frustrating because you look, like, I just wanted to start with 05. You look at the records: 05, 99 and 63, 06, 90 and 72, didn't make the playoffs, 07, 72 and 90, terrible year. 08 made the playoffs, 89 and 74, 09, 79 and 83, 2010, 88 and 74, didn't make the playoffs, 2011, 79 and 83, 2012, 85 and 77, didn't make the playoffs. Then it gets really fucking bad. 2013, 63 and 99. 2014, 73 and 89. Non-rebuild years, by the way. 2015, 76 and 86. 16, glimmer of hope in the beginning. Mediocre. 78 and 60 or 78 and 84. Hahn comes out. Rebuild starts. Little excitement. 17, 67 and 95. 2018, 62 and 100. 2019, 72 and 89. Finally, 2020, COVID shortened year. 35 and 25. Really, with the way they were to begin that last month, they should have won the division that year. Shouldn't even had to have played Oakland. Lost to Oakland in the playoffs. Then magical year in 21, 93 and 69. Smoked by Houston in the playoffs. Next year, which is last year, 2022, 81 and 81. So far this year, 38 and 54. That's what the fucking problem is. It's that since the AL Central's been established, I think Cleveland's won the division double-digit times. Detroit's won at least 6 with that little core they had. Minnesota won it double-digit times. Where the fuck are we in this conversation? It's really not hard, and I love baseball because when you make the playoffs in baseball, it has this, like, I don't know if it's honeymoon feeling, but it's special. It's like something that doesn't come around often, at least for us. And it means more because the amount of games, the grind of the year, the injuries you have to go through, the depth you have to have, it just means more. And it's special because, quite frankly, we haven't seen it enough in our lifetime. But the point I wanted to make there is that's why it matters to White Sox fans. That's why the diehards are so pissed off, is because if you wanted to spend 4 or 5 years going through a rebuild, and this is what we get, you could have just been better in other areas and won the division every 2 years. We wouldn't have this discussion.
Absolutely. And that's where I think, I'm sure you remember those comments that came out from Kenny Williams earlier in the season that were kind of tacitly implying that maybe we could have done it the Kenny way and, just tried to kind of go for it every year and that would have been better. And maybe there's a case to be made for that because, if we waited several years of a rebuild to get this, I think a lot of White Sox fans would say, I would have rather have been competitive for a couple more years and maybe snuck a division win in there. Maybe you catch lightning in a bottle. Now, I wouldn't have argued for that, but I certainly see the case considering what this rebuild has resulted in. And I think what all those records that you just listed off show is that there's a top-down organizational rot with the Chicago White Sox. And it all comes back to what's on my shirt right now. And if podcast listeners, sell the team. I mean, it really is that simple. It's just a top-down organizational failure. And I don't trust Rick Hahn. I don't trust Kenny Williams. I don't trust anybody in that current front office to rebuild this team. And it's really sad because we've waited for a long time. We were promised a lot. We're not getting any of it. And I don't think anything is going to change until changes are made at the front office. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. And it's really sad.
I'll give you credit too. You touched on this last year a lot, and the second half of last year, especially after the trade deadline. I think that's where you flipped on Hahn, where it's like, dude, what the fuck? You didn't add anyone. Like, you could have added someone. You added Jake Diekman, which didn't do shit. Like, it's the excuses are done. I like Hahn as a person. I think he's very transparent at times. And I've always respected that, maybe almost a little too transparent. But at this point, you look at the White Sox front office in Chicago, you look at the Bears they're ascending. You look at the Blackhawks, they just got the number 1 pick. Kyle Davidson's making all the right moves. Even the Cubs front office, the worst case they falter after the All-Star break, at least they'll have players to sell to kind of get younger and better. You have the Bulls, which probably in the same spot as the White Sox, but we know the common denominator there.
Yep.
It's you bringing up Kenny is a great point, and I forgot that even happened this year. He leaked that to Nightingale for a reason because he wants to stick it to Han and Jerry a little bit. What if you knew the rebuild would be like this, even knowing we had 2020 and 21? Would you just have rather seen them just piece it together like they've been doing and tried to swing that way, or would you have still gone through with the rebuild?
Oh, that's a good question. I still think I would have gone through with the rebuild because it was the right thing to do and because it was so clear that Kenny's way was not working. And I want to be consistent to what I said at the time, which was that I was happy that they had chosen to go a different direction because Rick Hahn gets a lot of things wrong, but mired in mediocrity was a good phrase. And that's going to be thrown back in his face for a long time. So I still think the process was right to do the rebuild, but I don't think obviously the results have not netted what you've been looking for. And I certainly don't trust Rick Hahn to do another rebuild. But yeah, with the process being right, the results being bad, I think I'll still take the process over the results.
Yeah, and I think I would too, because it's just exciting to have a direction. I'm anti-rebuild, but this felt like, and I feel like this was the first team in Chicago to kind of do it at the time. Like it felt right. It felt like, okay, they're getting big packages for fucking Adam Eaton, Chris Sale, and these guys. And it's at the very least you spend with that, you're going to be good. And we know they didn't spend with that. But I think that's where the problem with the Rick Hahn keeps coming in. It's that you said you're going to be all in on free agents, all in on everything. Maybe you shouldn't have said that and been like, hey, we're going to trade these guys. We're going to try to develop these young guys, and hopefully they work out. And if we mix in a veteran free agent here too, we will. Don't say there's going to be parades. Jerry's committed. I get we have a top 5 payroll this year, which is fucking crazy to say with this record roster. But we do because someone wanted a bullpen that was fucking stacked out. And you know what? I keep blaming Tony. I can't blame Tony anymore. Part of me thinks it was Rick and Kenny coming together because those two decided Craig Kimbrell was the guy at that trade deadline to get instead of like a second baseman and a right fielder.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've heard a lot of conversation around Tony, and it's been, well, you know, I think Nightingale even said it on 670, like, oh, well, maybe Tony wasn't the problem, and I think that's faulty logic. I think two things can be true at once. Tony was awful, and the front office is awful. You know, both things can be true. So I don't really like that rhetoric. You know, I'm sure we'll get into Kerfoot a little bit more. I think he's been dealt a really tough hand here. You know, I don't think he's been great, but I don't think he's been terrible either. I think it's really tough to judge given, you know, given how the team has played this year. No manager is going to look good with this team. So, but yeah, I think the Tony rhetoric is just, it's faulty logic.
Yeah, it's definitely faulty logic. And folks, we're at the beginning of the intro here. This is going to be one of those episodes. We have a list going out. I just want to give a shout out to this White Sox Talk podcast, Sox Machine, James Fox and the boys covering the draft and everything like that. We're not going to talk draft because we're just not, but all the coverage this year has been fantastic with a team that's really irrelevant. And without this latest Northwestern scandal, that's kind of blown over how much they should be getting ripped this week, a dead time. And I think maybe that'll come Wednesday and Thursday after this All-Star game. We're recording this Tuesday night. But, you know, White Sox fans, this is for you. It's going to be a bumpy episode, and there's going to be a lot of honest truths here because it's that time. At the end of the day, either a horse can run or it can't. And right now, the White Sox as an organization might as well be a dead horse.
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. I was hearing just on 670 today what they would have to go to even get to 85 wins. They do the Sox math counter, and just I forget the exact numbers, but I think it was like 47 and 20 something the rest of the way to get to 85 wins. So I just want to say it. If there's anybody out there who's still holding on hope, I admire you. But this is done. This is bad. And I know that the division is terrible, but this team's been showing you who they are for a long time now, and it's time to believe them. They're not coming back. This is over. It's time to think about the trade deadline and the draft picks and what the next good White Sox team might look like, because it's done. It's
over. And the thing about it is, you just look at the MLB, and it's like the AL Central's not going to get any better. Like, what does the Tigers farm system scare you? No. Cleveland's always going to develop pitching, and they have a good manager, but does that team scare you? No. Twins? Hell no. They're about to be really old, really fast. Buxton and Correa can't stay healthy. They have no pitching. They haven't had pitching in like 6 years. And the Royals are, Jesus, they're the Royals. So
this is a point worth sticking on, though, Nick, because the AL Central continuing to be bad and projecting to be bad for a long time allows the White Sox to continue to do what they're doing and not change anything and say, hey, maybe once every 3 years we can rise up and win something. And it allows them to continue the status quo as they have for a long time and say, well, we might get 90 wins one year. We might get 87 wins one year, and that'll win the division. And then our fans will be happy. And Jerry would be perfectly satisfied with that. Or, I don't know if you want to address his quotes from the conference now. I don't know. We haven't talked about those yet, but you know, what did he say? Just because you get fourth place or just because you get second place doesn't mean it was a bad season. I mean, that's how he feels. And they're going to continue to do that in this shitty division.
Yeah, Jerry Reinsdorf is a tone-deaf moron. I will say this. There's a lot of smoke, and I've heard this from at least 10 people that I know, either with or around the organization, that he's pissed. He's been leaving games early, has been going to games. Like, he is, like, utterly dumbfounded by this team, like we all are. But actions need to speak louder than his words or his so-called outburst or whatever's going on within the organization. We need to see him fire Kenny and Rick. To be honest, I'd like, if Rick is not going to be the guy making decisions, even if you're going to keep Kenny, fire Rick tomorrow. He should not be making the calls at deadlines.
Well, that's the thing, right? I don't know if we want to go into trade deadline right now, but everyone knows they need to sell. Well, yeah, they need to sell. Do you trust Rick Hahn to make these deals? No, I don't trust Rick Hahn to make these deals. And you know what? If Jerry says this is my even more kind of overarching frustration with the Jerry situation is we hear all the time, Jerry cares about winning. It's Jerry's pissed off. Jerry's upset. Winning is Jerry's number one priority. No, it's not. Okay,
no.
It quite simply is not. And that's what pisses me off even more than them being bad is the fact that the fan base is consistently lied to. We are lied to, and that we are told that winning is the number one priority, but then they don't operate like it. They don't go out and get a right fielder when they need one. They don't go out and get a second baseman when they need one. They don't sign the big contract when they need to. They don't offer Machado the amount of money that he's commanding. They don't operate like a championship organization. They don't invest in analytics. We can continue to go down the list. So don't tell me that winning's the top priority, but then not act like a championship organization. When is the last time that you have felt like the White Sox could actually get a big name free agent? It doesn't happen. The fact that as a fan base, in one of the biggest markets in the country, when a big name free agent becomes available, we know. You and I text each other. We're not even in the running. Let's see who's further down the list and who's more in the White Sox price range. Okay, don't tell me that winning is the top priority, but then not operate your organization like you care about winning. And I know that we're told all the time, Jerry wants to see another World Series before he dies. No, he doesn't. I don't believe that he cares about that. I sincerely don't. I think he cares about his bottom line only, which comes back to what's written on my shirt, sell the fucking team.
Yeah, the money doesn't go with you when you die, Jerry. And you're a cheap fuck, so you probably don't want to give it to your kids or nephews or whatever the fuck you have. I'm trying not to make this personal, but it just angers us so much because, as we talked about in the beginning, it's just different being a Sox fan, and it means more to us. And it's about the summers. It's about just literally the old fucking slogan they need to bring back and have the players watch some of those videos. Pride, passion, tradition. That's what the White Sox are about. And you don't feel that. There's no cool intro video going to the games. there's just a meh around the organization. Like, we're okay. They took the pennants off the lights and like the division championship, put them in like a small thing in the corner in left field. What the fuck is that? That's
It's
fucking
everything.
garbage. It's the whole thing. The only thing they've done cool is the light show and Liam's intro. That's about it. That's about it. It's an organizational issue, and we'll get into the trade deadline and all that. I want to kind of stay on track here. But the first step in this is admitting we were wrong, because we were both wrong. I was definitely wrong on a lot of these guys. I don't know how, but that's the first topic I have written down is we were wrong. I was wrong. First of all, we'll talk about some of the players we were wrong on. But I thought Chuck Garfien made a great point of this, and it's kind of crazy to me that this has been an issue for so long. The clubhouse has been an issue since 2019, and some of the players in it, I think we can guess who: Moncada, Eloy, Abreu contributed by not contributing, if that makes sense. And some of these guys it doesn't seem like they give a fuck.
No, it doesn't look like they do. And I think that's been one of the bigger frustrations of this year is that's what Pedro Grifol was brought in to fix. He was brought in to fix that kind of broken culture. And the fact that it consistently looks like guys aren't hustling and guys aren't playing hard, and the fact that they don't do the fundamental things correctly, the fact that they still miss cutoff men, the fact that they're still bad at base running. I mean, it's all the things that we've seen for so long that they were supposed to be better at this year, and they're just not. And so at some point, yeah, you do have to look at these players and just say, we were wrong about these guys. And a lot of people, it wasn't just us, a lot of people were wrong about these guys, right? I mean, think about 2018, 2019, all the projected starting lineups for the White Sox, and the fact that they were legitimate World Series contenders, quote unquote, going into the 2022 season. I mean, we weren't the only ones who were wrong, but that's where I'm saying I feel stupid for ever really believing in these guys, because if you look back and you look at, let's think about their team offensive profile, the fact that none of these guys walk. They just don't.
None.
And that's something that we should have seen. Good teams walk. They get on base. And then when they hit homers, they're multi-run homers because guys are on base. I think they're the second worst OBP team in the league.
That is correct.
So, you look at some of these things that good teams do well and that they teach from an organizational level top down, and the White Sox just don't do that stuff. So, again, it kind of comes back to the full organizational rot, but like I said, I feel really stupid for ever having truly believed in this organization, and that I got that wrong. I really did. And let's go into the specific players because we got a lot.
But where do we want to start? Because there's a long fucking list. Let's start with Yoan Moncada. Maybe and I remember Adam Dunn's few seasons, and Yoan Moncada may be the biggest disappointment in White Sox history.
Ooh, I'd have to think back because there's been a lot of disappointment in White Sox.
A lot of disappointment, but I don't remember a guy the way he played in 2019, at least the second half, it was like, whoa. And 2020 was terrible. No one wants to talk about that for this shortened, but he was terrible. That was the year he had COVID early in the year. And then I remember he got legged out a triple and was like, I thought I was going to die going to third. Ever since he got COVID though, he's been terrible, but I don't know. Maybe it's something with that. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but Han said he had a good season in 21. He didn't. He just got on base, which was a byproduct of being in a lineup with very hot players, especially Yaz in the second half. But Yoan Moncada, man, he has no heart, no soul. And Chuck Garfien, a guy who works for the White Sox, is being fed information that he's a part of the issue in the clubhouse as soon as he got paid. Not a good look. Not a good look.
Yeah. I think Steve Stone kind of touches on this. If you listen closely to him on 670, he'll say things like, is every guy doing everything that they can to maximize their potential and contribute to this team in every way that they possibly can? And things that he'll say are you getting enough sleep? Are you doing all your pregame drills? Is your concentration consistently there? Are you eating the right foods? And if you read, you don't have to read between the lines too far to know that he's talking about Moncada. And you can see it on the field, the way that he's moping around when he's out there, or it doesn't look like he hustles all the time. It's just a really frustrating watch. I will say I don't think he's the biggest disappointment in Sox history just because he is such a good defensive third baseman, and I do want to give credit where credit is due on that front. He's fantastic at third. But, I mean, especially this year, he can't even stay on the field. So
the best availability or the best ability is availability. He's not available ever.
He's not available.
Ever. And he just doesn't help the team. And then I've seen some of the most egregious mistakes on the base paths. I've seen him come up in clutch moments, even though last year was pretty clutch in the second half. Other than that, I just don't get it. Just a huge disappointment. It seems like not a great clubhouse guy either. Anything else on Moncada? I mean, his last year on the Sox will be next year. He's owed $25 million next year. And then he has a $5 million buyout the year after, which they will buy him out.
Yeah, I guess I just want to note, I mean, Moncada came up for the Sox in 2017. He has been worth 13.8 WAR for his entire career with the White Sox. And the five and a half of that was in 2019. And then he was 4 WAR in 2021. So he has been league average or below pretty much every other year. And that is not what you gave a guy an extension for.
No, and that's not a guy like that. I kind of get why the Red Sox didn't give us Devers now. Don't you?
Checks out.
I think we got hoodwinked a little bit there. Let's move on to Andrew Vaughn's an interesting one for me. Now, I'm not putting Andrew Vaughn on the players we were wrong about or players that completely suck, but he's been a disappointment, especially the last 2 months, I'd say. April, he had a lot of RBIs. He still isn't developing into the hitter we expected him to be. And I'm not sure if it's because they rushed them. They did rush him through the minor league system a little bit, but he was a first round pick. The hitting profile was there. I'm kind of speechless on Vaughn. He's at first base. His legs should be there this year. He's just kind of not what you need out of that position with Jose Abreu. 1, last year having a down year, numbers-wise, and kind of declining with age. And 2, filling that big gap that notoriously the White Sox have had big production from first base as long as we've been alive, pretty much.
2 words on Andrew Vaughn. More homers.
Yep.
That's it. You're going to be a first baseman on my team. You got to hit more homers. 12 home runs in the first half this year. 17 homers all season last year. I get he's a high RBI guy, and that's great. But, I mean, especially last year when nobody was hitting homers, he needs to hit more home runs. He just does. I mean, Andrew Vaughn's been worth 0.2 WAR this year, and he's also not a good defensive first baseman. So when you're not going to hit homers and not going to be good defensively, it's a tough way to make a living as a first baseman. So
also slow as shit. The worst, I believe, worst base runner in baseball, statistically.
I could believe that. Yeah, I don't have the number in front of me, but I could totally believe that. Watching him run and just kind of looks like he shrugs his shoulders back and forth. He kind of waddles around the bases more than he actually runs. And you know what? I want to like Vaughn because at least when he goes up there, I feel like for the most part, I can see what his game plan is. I feel like for the most part, he has competitive at-bats. But you're just, again, if you're going to play first base, you have to hit for more power. And I understand that the White Sox put Andrew Vaughn in a terrible position by having him play outfield the last couple of years. And I think everybody expected some positive regression with him playing first base this year, and we're just not seeing it. So, I would say overall, I'm not closing the book on him, but
no, I'd like to see more.
Word.
Yeah,
at least so far, disappointment's the right word.
Disappointment. Let's go to another slow guy we signed who was once given the largest contract in White Sox free agent history, or largest contract in White Sox history, period. Yasmani Grandal, major disappointment out of one half of this 4-year deal, who's bad in 2020. He was bad most of 21 besides the second half, which was historic. And we found out he had a knee issue most of the year that year, and that's why his walk rate was 22%. It is now 7%. I'll give him credit. He looks a lot better than he did last year. He got himself in tremendous shape. He showed flashes a little bit this year. He hasn't been dog shit. His ability to be a defensive catcher at this point in his career is non-existent. It's embarrassing to see him miss balls like he does. Again, slow as shit. Doesn't really hit from the right side well anymore. There's not much else to say. I'd rather see Carlos Perez get time there than him at this point.
Me too. Yeah, he has his cooks. His knees are gone. And you know what? To some extent, you can't even blame him for that, because if he's old and he's caught a lot of games, I think that if the other younger White Sox players developed the way that you had expected them to, and you were in more of your there was actually a competitive window to be had, you'd look at the Grandal contract and you'd say, you know what, that second half of 2021 was so awesome, and he was good for stretches of our competitive window. But yeah, his knees are shot, and obviously they're not going to re-sign him after this year with him being a free agent. I think what I'm more interested in, and we'll probably get to this later, is the White Sox are fucked at catcher going forward. They have no catching prospect.
I mean, is Carlos Perez good?
Not at catching.
He's good at hitting.
Yeah, he might be a good hitter.
But that just doesn't win in baseball today.
Yeah. At this point, I think I would rather see a true defensive first catcher, a Martin Maldonado type, to where, you know what, I don't care if you hit 190 and hit like 10 homers, just manage a pitching staff and give me some competent defense. Because if I have to see Yasmani Grandal just flat out miss the ball anymore, my head's going to explode.
Dude, I was on high school teams that had less pass balls than this White Sox team. I feel like I watch 5 every game. It's crazy. It's crazy. But I agree with you. With Yaz, it's not as personal as some of these other guys, because you knew what you were getting in for signing this guy when he was going to be 34 and an old 34 going into last year's contract. And you're telling me this guy couldn't bat 8th or 9th on a playoff team and contribute? No, he absolutely could. That's where you thought you'd be at this point with Yaz, and you're not. So yeah, we're fucked at catcher. We'll get into that. Let's see who else. Let's bring up the most obvious guy. And I have not seen a fall from grace like this, and maybe ever. Tim Anderson. It feels like any whenever this baby mama story came out last year, and then he fractures his finger, and then he doesn't come back. And last year, April, most of May, he was awesome. Gets hurt. Baby mama story comes out. Fucking terrible. I don't know what happened. Then this year, he was pretty good in the beginning. Shaky defensively as always. And then he gets hurt in Minnesota. Freak accident, out for time, is playing through something clearly, and we have to keep hearing about it. Dude, I don't know if he's playing through that knee or not anymore. It's clearly bothering him. It's clearly mental. He goes on the Pivot podcast, which I love, and says he needs to be paid like a shortstop. He needs $100 million. Then he'll talk about a position change. My dude, you need a position change now. And not only that, you need to figure out how to fucking hit real quick, or you're not going to be in the game in 2 years.
Tim Anderson does not have a home run this year. That's
insane. He's hitting 228.
That is insane.
Insane.
Tim Anderson has a weighted runs created plus of 43. We are in Lurie Garcia territory here. Like, no exaggeration. He is that bad. I mean, a fall from grace like we have never seen before. I mean, just to throw out and put this in context with a few numbers. Tim Anderson's best season, he slashed 335, 357, 507 for a weighted runs created plus of 128. That was his best overall season. Tim Anderson is currently slashing 223, 259.
Christ.
He's slugging 263. He's been worth negative 1.1 WAR this year, according to the Fangraphs.
But you can't win with a negative WAR at short and a negative WAR at catcher. You just can't.
You just can't. I mean, you talk about, being strong up the middle, and the White Sox are quite the opposite of that. So, I do want to make the point. I think that if Tim Anderson played in New York, or if Tim Anderson played in a few different markets, if Tim Anderson played in Philadelphia, this baby mama drama story would be getting a lot more play than it is. I really don't understand why Chicago media is caping for him. I understand that it's Tim Anderson and he's been the face of the franchise for a long time. And heck, I have a Tim Anderson jersey hanging in my closet right now. I want to love Tim. I really do. But
yeah, it's awesome.
There is a strong correlation between when he fell off last year and when some of this drama started. So I do think there's got to be some mental stuff going on there, or at least there's a strong possibility. I was willing to give him the mulligan on the knee situation for a long time. Steve Stone talked about that consistently on the score, that the knee wasn't at 100%. It wasn't at 100%, that he was trying to play through it. And that, the hitting would come back when the knee was feeling better. But he's unplayable right now. He really is. And we should talk about this as well. Why is he still batting second?
Well, yeah.
Why did it take him so long to be dropped in the order?
We'll get into Grifol, and that'll be brought up again. But, dude, if you're not good for 7 games at the leadoff spot or 8, you got to switch things up. That's why I always appreciated about Joe Madden and Ozzie. They would fuck things or they'd move things around, man. They would always move things around and change things up, and I think that's an aspect missing in today's game. Like, I feel like Aaron Boone maybe does a good job with this with the Yankees at times. He'll bat Judge lead off or have Rizzo up there, and at the Phillies too. Just be different, dude. Fucking stop listening to the fucking whatever the numbers are saying all the time, and just fucking try something. Just put Tim Anderson 9. Could be great. Get back to himself. They were talking on the White Sox Talk podcast, and Paul Konerko was like prototypical 3-4 hitter for the Sox for 15 years. In 2003, he struggled. They moved him down to 8. He figured his shit out, had less pressure on him. They moved him back. Do the same. Why are you putting the pressure on this guy? He had the winning run on second base, the tying run on third with 2 outs from 19 to 21. I have no doubt he's getting a base hit, and the Sox are winning that game from 19, even 18 to 2022 at the beginning of last year. Beginning of last year. This year, looks at 2 balls, swings through 2 95-mile-per-hour fastballs and swings at a fastball, quite frankly, that was very hittable. It was a little high for strike 3. He just doesn't have the confidence. He doesn't look like he wants to be out there, and maybe that's the injury, and maybe he has had to change mechanics and all that. The problem is, and this has been the story of this rebuild, these guys try to be heroes and play through these injuries. It doesn't work. It's like Robert last year. It's like Moncada for about a month this year before they went on the IL stint again. Just go miss 5 to 10 games, get right, and figure it out. And maybe they feel like with the depth and players behind them, they can't do that, and that's a front office problem. But, man, you got to figure it out. And I will say this about Tim, something I'm very disappointed in second half of 18, 19, 20, and 21. It felt like that dude was a big-time leader in the clubhouse. Maybe he wasn't, but at least within the media, he portrayed himself that way. There was a fucking edge. You go see Tim Anderson play in person, you can see him walking up to the plate. He'd walk around like Conor McGregor walks around a ring at shortstop. I mean, maybe he's not great defensive, but at least there's a fucking intimidation factor there. Now, no, there's none of that. And I just don't know. That's what I'm most disappointed about. It's like, damn, we got a badass motherfucker leading this team. And he's gone soft. There's no other way to put it.
I thought the same thing. A badass motherfucker. That's a good way to put it. Because I remember so vividly, I know you do too, after the Field of Dreams game when Tim hit that home run. And I was like, Tim is that guy. He has that, you always hear it. He's got that dog in him. I'm like, Tim's got that dog in him. I'm so happy he's on my team. He's that guy. He's got the swag. I remember Joe Buck went on 670 after the Field of Dreams game and said Tim Anderson should be the face of baseball. That was 2 years ago.
Dude, I'll go back.
Unrecognizable now.
I'll go back even further. 2019, when he bat flipped the Tigers in that day game and they got mad and threw at him, then he fucking hit another home run to walk it off. I'm like, dude, you don't even have to be that good. I'm like, okay, we have a dude who we can ride with every day. And it doesn't matter. He's going to fucking grind it out. He's going to get under your skin. That's a dude I want to fight for. You don't have to be good. Be that.
Be that guy. Yeah.
Be that guy. You can hit 250 and be that guy. Get on base. Do something. Dude, I can get on base at a 259 clip in the big leagues just by not swinging the bat.
I think that it's sad that I even have to ask you this question, but are you picking
Fuck.
up Tim Anderson's option next year?
Fuck, dude. I don't know. And I go back and forth on this one. I have not seen any improvement. I have not seen a willingness to become what he was in terms of to the media and shit like that. He's spinning his own narrative. It's not a clubhouse guy because the clubhouse is a consistent problem from what if Chuck and Ryan McGuffey are hearing this stuff about the clubhouse, it's fucking true. And that's a problem. In my opinion, you got to ship him out, whether it's for nickels on the dollar, you ship him out with a reliever at the deadline. I get no one can play short. You have Andrews for the rest of the year. Just let him audition and maybe turn his season around. We can get into some of the struggling veterans on this team too. But Russ, I don't know. It's something I go back and forth on. I feel like because of the free agent market, because of his value, unless you can, if the Dodgers or someone like the Dodgers or an organization that's really good thinks they can turn him around and you can get something for him, at least a catching prospect, like something we need, then you have to pick it up and you see how next year goes. Because again, the division is fucking bad. Because what else are you going to do next year? You're not going to try and compete? No, they're going to try and compete. Let's just call what it is. They are. However they think competing is, the division is too bad not to.
Yeah, I think you're right.
What would you do? What would you do? If you were the GM, what would you do?
I wouldn't trade him because I just think I would wait and I would see and I'd pray to God that things improve unless he has some kind of, heroic turnaround before the deadline. I would not trade him because I think you'd be just trading him at his absolute lowest value. I think that I would pick up the option because there's no organizational depth to play shortstop next year. Colson Montgomery, with his injuries earlier this season, is not going to be ready to come up and play short next year. There's just no way. And so, what are you going to have Lenyn Sosa play shortstop next year? I mean, I'm not here for that. So I'm going to pray to God that Tim turns it around and has a good first half of the year next year, and then he's walking after that. So I'm going to try to trade him at the deadline next year, but I don't think I'd trade him for pennies on the dollar this year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. It's just, and maybe you find a team where you can figure out 2 trades in the offseason where you trade away Tim and just get a defensive guy. And listen, if there's 2 positions you can afford to be bad offensively but awesome defensively, it's short and catcher.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
what do you okay, so this is why I go back and forth on this. You keep Tim, you keep him in the offseason. He's pretty good next year. He's hitting 300 in the first half. He's not a negative WAR player, still iffy defensively, maybe has 5 or 7 homers, and you're in contention. And let's say you win the division next year. What do you do with Tim from there? He walks for nothing? Let's say you compete and you don't win the division next year. But you fall short of the division. I go back to that and I'm just like, do you let him walk? Is Colson Montgomery at second next year at this time? Like, I don't know.
You see where Colson Montgomery is in his development at that time. I think that's
and then make the play at the trade deadline. But you're not going to be able to trade him if he's contributing to winning in the first half of next year. And then he just walks.
Yes, but even I don't
you don't extend him at this point. I don't think he gets extended. You can't.
No, there's no way. He's not getting what he talked about on the podcast earlier this year. But he was looking at he saw what other shortstops are getting paid and he wanted to get extended. Yeah, there's no way he's getting extended. I think I'd go with the easy answer there. See where Montgomery is in his development, then you make a judgment there. My thing is, even if he's having a good year, even if it looks like they're in contention next year and they could make the playoffs, maybe it sounds overly dramatic, but I don't even care because even if they slide into the playoffs with 86 wins next year, they're not winning anything. Who cares? They're not going to win a World Series, so I don't even care.
Yeah, I hear you. That's what's tough about the situation. That's going to be a fascinating situation that's going to have to play out. And again, do you trust Rick and Kenny to make that decision?
No.
Tim Anderson is Kenny's boy, always has been. So I don't know there. Let's move on. We can touch on Eloy. I think he's fine. If the right deal came, I would move him because, again, the best availability is availability. Is he ever going to have a full season? No. But when he's on the field, man, not on the field, when he's in the lineup, he actually has some stretches that are pretty impressive.
I agree with you. I think that Yeah, Eloy's so tough because, when he's on the field, he is so good. And you see the power potential, consistently when, I shouldn't say consistently, but that the power potential is there. He's one of the ones that really scares me because it's like, God, I could so see him going to another team and have, playing 100, even if he played 130, 140 games. Everybody said you see a 40 home run season out of the guy, and I do too.
He's 26 too.
Yep. It just feels like it would be so White Sox for him to trade him to another team and for him to just absolutely go off for a year. So I'm really torn on him, but I don't know. Again, apathetic either way because it's not going to matter.
Yeah, it's probably not going to matter. We can talk about Gavin. I'm not talking about Gavin Sheets. He sucks. No. That shouldn't be on our major league roster. He plays way too much. Kalas, I'm fine with the way they handled him, but again, if you knew that was a possibility, he would struggle. You probably shouldn't have signed Benintendi and went literally. You could have went Conforto, Gallo for left and right. And paid $24 million, which is Benintendi's getting what, 25, 20 this year, or 18 maybe, whatever. You could have went. I don't even think it's that much. You get what I'm saying. You could have went $24 million, solved two problems, and maybe if you weren't paying the bullpen 45, you could have got that. No one. And here's the thing that makes this even more frustrating. If Rick said, "Listen, we don't have a lot of depth in the minors, so this is what we're gonna do. Each year we're gonna use our pro scouts because we have fucking pro scouts for a reason, and we're gonna sign guys to 1-2 year deals with club options for the second year, and we're gonna same thing they did with Pollock. They traded for Pollock, but you give him that deal, don't give him a player option, get a club option. And I know Pollock was a player option, but you get a guy like that, and you fill gaps, and you try to compete with him. And guess what? If it doesn't work out, you can trade him at the deadline, which the Cubs will do with Bellinger and some of the other one-year deal players they have. And if you're competing, you compete and you add. You add with them. It's really not hard. And you know what? If Gallo had a good year for you, and you're like, you know what, Joey? Let's give you 2 for 20, 2 for 25. Because at that point, you're not committing yourself to these guys and stuck. They're stuck with Eloy. They're stuck with Moncada. Anderson contract I liked at the time was fine. But you're putting yourself in these big holes because you're not utilizing your pro scouts, which, newsflash, they're not very good. They haven't been good in a long time. And it's just like, dude, if you would have came in and said, Kalas is going to start the year in the majors. He's not going to start. We'll have Conforto and right, Gallo and left. They'll rotate DH because they both have injuries. We'll have Robert in center. And maybe you do something at second because you have more money. And hand up, Russ. I was wrong about Elvis Andrus, but your boy Segura is not having a good season either.
I was going to tell you that you're not allowed to. I was not going to let you skate through this podcast without talking about Elvis Andrus. I'll talk about him more later. I want to comment on Gavin Sheets just for a moment. I know you said you don't want to talk about him. Me and my roommates, or old roommates, nickname for him was Gavin Cheeks. Because he's so bad. God. He's not ass. He's just the cheeks. He is that bad. God, he's such a frustrating watch. But no, I totally agree with everything that you're saying about the outfield. Obviously, I know we talked at the beginning of the year that you shouldn't have gone into what you called a contention season or a winning window with a rookie Oscar Colas and counting on him to be your everyday right fielder. And I know I was excited that at least we might see some competent defense out of Colas. He's made some rookie mistakes, some balls he's played off the wall, not so well. But, I'm willing to give him some time, and I think we'll probably see a lot more of him in the second half this year. But, I'm just pulling up the stats as we're talking about this. You easily could have gone with Conforto, who he's got 13 homers on the season. He's been a 105 weighted runs created plus. You'd happily take that on your team right now. But they don't do that. They continue to not address the right field issue, and it continues to be an issue. So it's incredibly frustrating. And you're right. You could have taken that. If you weren't going to spend on a right fielder, then you could have taken that money and spent on a more legitimate second baseman. I know Gene Segura's having a bad season. Hand up, I was wrong. But
we're both wrong, Russ.
We were both wrong, man. We like to think we know, but and I still think I do know a couple things, but yeah, obviously the way that they allocate money is just piss poor, and continues to be.
Yeah, and thank God there's some bullpen contract we can trade, and this shit comes off. A lot of this shit comes off the books because, I mean, it would be they're actually in a perfect position. This will never happen because Jerry's a fuck. To have like just wipe out the front office, and then you kind of go into next season, and I think let's talk about a few other players before we get into next season plans. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go to the pitching staff because I think that kind of sums up position players. Shout out Jake Berger. I know the guy strikes out at a very high clip, but at least he has fucking 19 home runs at the break and has really been a spark plug for this team. We know what he is. I mean, let's be honest. He's not a starter in the major leagues. He's fine.
Yeah. Shout out to Jake Berger, though. Not just, I mean, Homer's great. He's still, I think his OBP is still 278. So I obviously have deep concerns about his viability. I do want to give him slight credit, though. He was pretty much unplayable at third base last year. I do think there's been marginal improvement. He's never going to be a good third baseman, but there's been some improvement this year. I also want to give Berger credit. He was kind of the first one that it was well reported he was using the iPitch machine.
Yeah.
And I think that has slowly trickled down to some other players on the team. It sounds like Robert's using that a little bit more now, and we're seeing the results that he's having. So quick shout out to Berger on that one. He's at least been fun. Shout out to Brian Knights for the great nickname. Jake Berger, that beautiful bald bitch.
The Andrew Vaughn fucking Rakes Club is sick too. Yes. Like I will say this about Berger, Sheets, and Vaughn. Like if I could build a clubhouse of those personalities, I would. It's just the ability is just not there with them. But those guys bring it in the clubhouse from what I've heard, and appreciate them. They work their dicks off. They do what they're supposed to do. So as much as I like to shit on them, they're good dudes. But they're ultimately good dudes. As Ozzy likes to say on the post-game show, it doesn't matter if you all fucking hate each other. You just got to win fucking baseball games. And they don't do that. So let's move on to the pitching staff. Lance Lynn was dog shit, and another just a pro scouting letting you down. Or maybe it's just Rick Hahn, but he was great in 21, shit last year, shit most of this year. He's kind of turning on teams, hopefully, fingers crossed, knocked on wood. I don't know if these teams are fucking blindfolded or what. There's a lot of interest, and they think they can turn him around. They think it's like, hey, if he gets out of this losing culture, he'll be good. I don't think that's how Lance Lynn works, but we'll fucking take it. If they're able to trade Lynn, Clevinger, and Giolito and get decent returns for all of them, that's a start.
I don't think they're trading Clevinger just off the top, just because of the injury and the off-the-field issues, shall we say. Lynn, yeah, I kind of want to get your thoughts on this. So I'm sure you saw the piece in USA Today with Nightingale saying that the Rangers are showing some interest in Lynn, but that the asking price is high. And I just have a very simple question: why? I know he's been better as of late, but he's still got an ERA over 6, man. I mean, I feel like if you're trading for Lance Lynn right now, you're looking for an innings eater. You're looking for a guy who might give up 5 earned runs a game, but is going to go out there and give you 6 innings and 108 pitches. I don't know how valuable that is to a playoff team. Maybe to a team like the Rangers that is valuable, given their injuries in the starting rotation. But I don't think the asking price for Lance Lynn should be all that high right now. What do you think?
No, I don't either. I think the only thing I keep coming back to is that he had a good WBC in a competitive environment, so teams look at that. He has playoff experience, so maybe you throw him in as a long reliever in the postseason or down the stretch, and then he has that club control for next year. So you're getting a season and a half. So you can
pay him $18 million next year though.
As long as we're not doing it, I don't care who the fuck does. I would not. I think listen, I love his mentality. I have since day one. To be honest, I love Dallas Keuchel's mentality when he was here. I love Lance Lynn's mentality when he was here. I love Liam. I love most of the Joe Kelly. The problem is they're pitchers. None of our position players have this mentality, and that's the problem with the team. I will say this. The pitching under Ethan Katz for the last 3 years has done its fucking job most of the time. Outside of a bullpen that is extremely overpaid and Aaron Bummer, Graveman has been in so many shitty situations, And he's come out on top most of the time. I know he just blew a save. But to be asked to be a fucking closer, and he's never been a closer, and doing what he's doing, and then even Ronaldo Lopez for a stretch had a decent little run. He's kind of regressed really bad. Bummer is owed $7.5 million next year. He has a 7.20 ERA.
Aaron Bummer might be the most frustrating pitcher I've ever seen.
He doesn't give up hard contact.
That's the thing.
But he gives up a ton of runs and walks guys.
Yeah, the amount of just ground balls that it seems like scoot their way through the infield when Aaron Bummer's pitching it's infuriating to watch. But there's some days, and you know this, there's some days, Nick, where he looks like vintage Andrew Miller. Like, dude, he is a stud. And
I've seen him come in with bases loaded, have to face, like, he'll walk the bases loaded with two lefties, then make righties, like, swing and miss 6 straight pitches and get out of the inning. One of the hardest guys I have to figure out, but again, a guy who has not lived up to the bill in the bullpen. Joe Kelly, either injured or Joe Kelly, very streaky. Get him the fuck out of here. He's been cool, I guess. Whatever. He's been, whatever. Just get him out of here. Graveman, club control for next year, which I forgot about. It would take a lot for me to move him at this point. I think you need him next year.
Ooh, I'd trade him. If depending on what you can get, I'd trade him.
Why do you say that? You think there's regression coming?
No, I don't think there's necessarily regression coming. I just think that he's probably one of your bigger legitimate trade chips who they would realistically trade. And I think you could at least get something decent for him. Again, I'll come back to, I don't trust Rick Hahn to trade any of these guys, but I know that they probably will. So I think that I would trade him and at least see what's out there. I did not know, full disclosure, did not know that he's got the team control for next year. But to your point from earlier in the podcast, we've seen that you can find relievers. You know, relievers are so year to year.
Historically, under Hahn, the Sox have been really good with finding these no-name, hard-throwing relievers. They flipped. I mean, look at they cleaned up the Yankees. I think it was Robertson and the guy's still there. Who am I thinking of? Hard throw. Tommy Canehill. Yeah.
Tommy Cane. Yep.
Yeah. They cleaned up in that trade.
Yeah. Yeah, Graveman's a tough one. I agree. He's been thrown in some really difficult situations. Obviously, you weren't expecting him to be the closer. But I think, him and Kelly, maybe you even package him and Kelly together.
Would like that.
Needs some bullpen help, and then you see if you can net something better than trading them individually. That would be my preference.
Yeah, no, I agree there. Trying to think of other people in the bullpen. Sucks situation with Liam, but he gets diagnosed with cancer. You kind of knew he was not gonna.
Yeah,
pitch. Hopefully he comes
on him for the whole season.
No. Hopefully he comes back in the second half and shows you something, and then, I mean, if they won't totally tear it down, then you trade him in the offseason. But he'll be on the Sox next year. Let's just be honest. Lucas Giolito gone, right?
100%.
And before we even talk about him moving, shout out to that man. Rough year last year. He's been the Sox best pitcher by far.
Yes. No, he's been good. He's been really good, and I wish nothing but success for Giolito. I hope he goes somewhere else and is awesome. He really seems to have, reestablished himself this year, and, wish nothing but the best for the guy. Really tough news to come out about his divorce during the home run derby. I know that's a story for another day, but
yeah, that's tough.
Unfortunate, but it seems like one of the good, good clubhouse guys that you wish all the best for. A guy who's willing to stand up there and at least take some accountability on a team that we rarely see accountability on. So credit to Giolito, and I hope he goes somewhere else and ends up right in the middle of a pennant race and does well.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to watching pitch in some big games late in the year for sure. Because, man, he pitched in a lot of big games for the Sox, and he was lights out in most of them.
Absolutely. I want to see him with that Giolito look. A little low and the stare down. Yeah,
that was sick. Yeah,
knows what I'm talking about.
That was one of my of the short rebuild is probably one of my favorite games. Just he was so dominant, you knew they weren't touching him. Dylan Cease, disappointing for sure.
Think so. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think from what I've seen from Cease, Velo's been down just a little bit, and I think that that's impacting him. You know, when it's more 94 to 96 as opposed to 96 to 98, it's just not quite as effective. The other thing I've noticed from Cease, and Steve Stone has touched on this as well, is especially early in the season, he's opening up that front shoulder, and his mechanics are just a little bit off. And to me, it seemed like it was fixed for a period of time, and now, it's not fixed anymore. So I still think that Cease has fantastic stuff. I'm certainly not ready to give up on him. I think if you were to put him on the trading block, he would be one of those guys that other teams would look at and they would see a couple easy fixes that they could make with him. And, he could be right back to Cy Cease like he was last year. But I'm not ready to give up on Cease yet. And I believe he has 2 more years of team control after this. So given the White Sox lack of ballsiness when it comes to trades, I don't see them making a move on him.
So you're not going to sign him because he's a Boris client. So if a team comes to you and is like, hey, well, let's just say a good deal, would you do it this year?
100%. Yeah. I think besides Robert, I think everybody's on the trading block.
That's a good. I would agree with that. I think you'd be foolish not to listen on anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Robert's on your next playoff team for sure.
Well, that's the thing, and shout out to Jim Margulis on this point. He said that Robert is pretty much the only guy that you could see being on the next good White Sox team, and I agree with that. He could survive a rebuild and still be around. Obviously, Cease with being a Boris Klein and only having a couple more years of team control, that he's walking. So I think you want to trade him to a team like the Rays, they probably fixed him immediately, like they did Diekman. Not the Diekman.
Yeah, fuck you.
Category,
Tampa.
But you know what I mean. Another team could make an easy fix with him, and he could be a 2.5 ERA guy pretty quickly again.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. That's tough. Michael Kopech, your boy. I don't know if he's just not a starter. I don't know if he's dealing with an injury similar to last year where he's just not letting us on. He's never thrown this much, so they're kind of giving him a break, but he may have hurt himself. Disappointing, but has also shown flashes like he has for a while. I'm not ready to give up on him as a starter. I think you need more of a sample size, especially next year, see how where the arm is at in least the first half, and then make your judgment call from there.
I think the reality with Kopech, whether you think he's a starter or reliever, is you start mapping out this rotation for next season. And we were talking about some of the other guys, and Giolito's not going to be here. Lynn might not be here. Clevenger might not be here.
Clevenger will not be here.
Yeah, you need Kopech to start next year, so I think he's going to continue to be in the rotation, and I'm certainly not ready to give up on him yet. I mean, we like you said, we see the flashes. We see that he can dominate for 6 innings, 7 innings at a time, and when that fastball's got that little extra ride to it and the slider is on, I mean, he's dominant. He still can be. So I'm not ready to give up on him yet. Obviously he's a really frustrating watch. The one point I'll make to the folks who think that they should move him back to the bullpen because he was so effective there is one of Kopech's main issues has been walks. And I'm never a fan of moving guys from a rotation who have control issues into the bullpen with the 3-batter minimum, because if he comes in and he doesn't have his control that night, well, now you're looking at a, first and second, nobody out situation, or a bases loaded, nobody out situation if he comes in and walks 3 guys. So I don't like the idea of moving him back to the pen. And I think that given their roster construction, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Let's move on. We've talked about a lot of disappointing players. We're going to talk about Rick Hahn and Pedro Grifol. We're going to start with Rick Hahn first because Pedro Grifol is Rick Hahn's boy. We're both out on Rick Hahn. I think every White Sox fan is out on Rick Hahn. I think his mistakes started with over-promising, and then I think it's currently just being bad at his job. I don't know why Gavin Sheets is still on this roster. Go pick up a major league veteran that knows how to play the game. I don't get that. I don't get how Berger, no offense, Jake Berger, how is Berger the guy you're leaning on? How are these guys just the people you're leaning on, and it comes down to Hahn, whether Kenny had input or not. You're the fucking GM. You've been the GM since 2013. You have one division title, no playoff series wins. This was any other Chicago team. Be calling for his head 3 years after he took it. He should have got fired after 16, after trying to piece that together. If we're being honest, should have got fired after then because he damn well tried to win in 13, 14, 15, and 16.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been out on Hahn for a while after he didn't do anything after the trade deadline last year. And you'll remember our postseason podcast last year where I talked about how frustrated I was that he did his postseason press conference on the same day that they had,
Tony.
That they announced Tony and that the season wasn't technically over yet. And I think he really used that as a way to dodge questions about any specific players. But yeah, you said it perfectly, that the Sox haven't won a playoff series since Rick Hahn's been the GM. I mean, it's just that simple. So I don't understand how this guy continues to keep his job. I do understand it because he's Jerry's guy, and Jerry's got the blind loyalty. We all know that. But I just continue to be out on Hahn. I continue to be torn about the trade deadline because they should sell, but I don't trust him to make any of the right moves. And I think that he continues more and more to just come off so tone deaf and just has a fundamental misunderstanding of what his fan base feels about him. And it's just so frustrating. I mean, what was the quote earlier in the season? He said that the White Sox fans that he talks to are pretty happy. I want to know what Sox fans he's talking to, because I'd love to get Rick Hahn. I'd love to run into Rick Hahn on the concourse, or I wouldn't yell at him, or anything like that. But I would love to voice my concerns.
I would love to be in a room with him and these guys who are making these decisions and just be like, "What are you doing?
What are you doing?
What? What? Just I don't understand how you go into a season. You said last year was a failure. Gavin Sheets, Jake Berger, and Sebi Sabala are our bench players."
Absolutely. And here's the other thing that I'll note too is I think it is obviously at the end of the day, the accountability for the lack of player development on this team falls on Rick Hahn.
Yes.
Even if you wanted to say that you blame their pro scouting and their player development program and their draft picks for the lack of organizational depth, I don't agree with that argument. But even if you wanted to say that, you can still blame Rick Hahn for plenty of things. The supplemental trades that he's made,
he hasn't made enough trades, in my opinion. Yeah. He has not made enough trades outside of Lance Lynn and Craig Kimbrell. What has he done? Pollock,
right?
Not a whole lot, dude.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And let's look at the way you touched on it earlier, but it's such a good point. The way that he allocates his money. The pouring all the money into the bullpen when you know that you can find guys and that bullpens are year to year, or the free agents that he's signed, or maybe more importantly, the ones that he hasn't signed, your Gallos and your Confortos, and we can continue to go down the list, or his promises about money being spent that hasn't been spent, or the things that I'm so over the guy, man. I could go on for an hour about it.
It feels like he has a type in a bad way. It's like, I don't want to touch Conforto because he had a shoulder injury, and Gallo strikes out a lot. And, we want this guy for this reason because he's a leader and blah, blah, blah. Bro, you clearly don't care about the clubhouse. And one of the things Chuck brought up today in the Sox Talk podcast, you didn't do any background on who these guys were, and you did not spend time with them and really understand if they were committed to winning. I talk about the Cubs a lot this year. I'm not a Cubs fan, really despise them in general, that franchise. But I would love to root for that team. That team is fun, young, and hungry. Give me a team of those guys with no talent, no power hitters, compared to what we have.
You know what? Give me a team like them. Obviously, yes, I despise them. Or give me a team like the Orioles. Give me a team like the Reds. Give me a team like Cleveland that plays fundamentally sound. I mean,
just play good baseball.
Play good baseball for me, and that comes back to the point that I've been hammering for years: is the the fundamentals on this roster continue to be terrible. And there's some kind of disconnect between, Rick Hahn and Grifol and who they projected these guys to be. And to your point about him not understanding who these guys are, there's serious questions to be asked about when do you give guys money? When do you give guys extensions? Do you truly know who they are? Do you give guys extensions who the guys that you are giving extensions to, are they going to continue to play their ass off after they have generational wealth? And some of the Sox don't do it. They just don't.
No, and I don't. He's just been giving a pass for too long. I like the guy. I did like the guy. But it's enough is enough, dude. You've had the chance. At the end of the day, it falls on you. It doesn't matter if Tony was brought to you and hired to you and wanted bullpen and wanted Lurie signed. You could have gone about a different way or fucking resigned like a man. Like I don't understand a lot of the moves, and he doesn't explain his moves. Like Kyle Davidson, that guy will sit there and be transparent and do these behind the scenes shit. Ryan Poles, same thing. Hell, even the Bulls guys have done it. What the Jed Hoyer will sit there and explain on 670. Rick Hahn doesn't even go on 670 because they pissed him off years ago. Like, dude, stop it. Stop it. It's embarrassing what we have to go through as a fan base to see this guy continue to make moves that are just mind-boggling. And then you're going to trust this guy at the trade deadline? And then if you're going to fire him at the end of the year, you're going to what's the point? Just fire him now.
Now. They won't, though. That's the thing.
And then let's move on to Pedro Grifol, because this was Rick Hahn's boy, really the first manager it seems like he was able to hire. And I want to preface this. Pedro Grifol is like the 577th thing wrong with this organization and team. But man, he says some weird shit sometimes, and I cannot stand his post-game pressers. I honestly miss Tony a little bit, because at least his post-game pressers either looked like he was like 12 bourbons deep and you didn't understand what he was saying, or he was just like, fuck this team, we suck. Like, Grifol will literally just tell you the big parts of the game, be like, yeah, any questions about that, and won't answer anything. The TA thing, fucked up, should not be continuing to play there. The bullpen decision, whatever went into that, having Ronaldo close before Graveman and let Ronaldo close, keep pitching Lopez and Bummer in high leverage situations. They just haven't earned it. Pitch Middleton and Santos in those situations until their arms fall off, as far as I'm concerned. Again, the quotes just make him look stupid. Now you have Ozzy calling him out. I take Ozzy's word for more than what I probably should, but he brings up a lot of good points. Like, what are we doing? When they started out 8-21 and were on that 10 or 11 game losing streak, he remained calm. You need to do the opposite. What if that was Bruce Bochy? What if that was Terry Francona? Do you think he would be nice to the media? Do you think he would be pussyfooting around? No! Gabe Kapler would have fucking thrown a chair through a window. He would say, we suck. Like, there's just no... You said you were going to be accountable. You said they were going to play hard. And to be honest, I think some of the things he's doing behind the scenes are pushing some of these guys the wrong way. And they're just tuning him out.
I think they're tuning him out. I think that's exactly right. I want to emphasize your point about the post-game press conferences. When they have...
I cannot stand them.
And he gets up there and just explains to me what happened in the game. Thank you, Pedro. I watched the game. I know where you guys fucked up. Please explain to me why you fucked up. What are you doing to correct where you fucked up? And he had a quote. I'll botch the specifics, but some quote the other day about how the process is setting in and that they just need to continue to trust it and that they're really building the culture. And dude, you just went 5-1 in your homes, or 1-5, yeah, before the All-Star break. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, man?
And if I have to hear about the daily habits and all this shit, clearly Yohan Moncada, Eloy, we'll throw those two in to start. Don't give a fuck about that. And probably Robert either.
They don't care. They don't.
They don't care about fucking picking each other up and doing any of this shit. They don't give a fuck. So what is it you're doing for you to keep saying this shit?
What does he do well? That'd be my question. What does he do well?
I can tell you he empties the bench really early.
His obsession with emptying the bench every single
Tony didn't make enough moves.
Yeah.
He makes too many moves. And then Gavin Sheets is batting in the 11th with 2 outs and runners on second and third because you inserted him as a pitch runner in the 7th, down 1.
Or more importantly, Gavin Sheets is playing the outfield in extra innings because you felt the need to empty your bench. And you know what? I would rather err on the side at times of making more moves than less because Tony was so frustrating, and the fact that he literally had to be told by fans during games to pinch run Adam Engel. I'm sure you remember that.
Yeah, and I get when you have guys like Engel or Billy Hamilton, you're making these moves. You're going Gavin Sheets. My light's on. Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't just go dark. You went Gavin Sheets. You go Gavin Sheets to Clint Frazier. Clint Frazier to Gavin. Like, dude, you just don't even need to make that move.
Right.
Let's put Elvis in at third for Berger to run. Dude, you're better off if that guy has to come up later. Like how Ozzy used to do it with Paulie and Tomey and some of these slower guys is, let's get the lead. Let's be up 5. Or let's get the lead and it's the 9th, and then we'll take him out. And then we'll pitch run for him. Like, just make the common sense move. Like, the move to make a move just to make a move is not going to be good.
Right. I think that I do want to just be fair to Grifol in that, like I said earlier, he was handed a really tough job. And that when we talked about this in our preseason podcast, is that he was asked to fix a lot. He was asked to fix a lot of process stuff. He was asked to fix a lot of fundamental stuff. He was asked to fix a lot of base running and a lot of defense. And he was given an impossible task in a way. At the same time, everything that we were told that he was going to make better is not any better. They're 16 below at the deadline, or at the break, excuse me. So I wouldn't go as far as to say failure at this point, but I think you and I have talked about if Grifol were a one and done, which I think John Heyman has brought up, if he were a one and done, I'd just kind of shrug my shoulders at this point. He's fine. He might be a good major league manager at some point. I think he will be. I try not to take anybody's baseball word as gospel, but if I do take anybody's, it's Steve Stone. And Stone has talked about how the fact that he thinks that Grifol will eventually be a good major league manager. He's just fine right now.
Yeah, he's fine. But here's the thing. If Hahn would have brought in a Bochy or someone like that, you needed someone to come in and, again, not coddle you guys and be like, yo, if you're not going to play hard, get the fuck out. It just hasn't. And maybe he has to a certain extent, but it hasn't been enough. Like, you needed a guy like Ozzy to come in here and be like, I'm not saying they should have hired Ozzy because I think that would have been dumb. But it's almost like now it's like, man, what if they did have a rah guy? Maybe they're not 16 under. Maybe they're 5 or 6.
Wouldn't be worse.
Yeah, it wouldn't be worse. And maybe some of these guys have gotten benched and had the Robert like experience. I don't know, man. It's just, like I said, I think we both agree we can't judge him too much, but there are some negatives starting to show. I mean, naturally it's going to happen when you're 16 games under. And if they go 30, or what if they go 30 games under? Like, maybe he is one and done.
He's not, though, because I'm still convinced Hahn's not getting fired and Hahn's not going away from this guy.
That's a good point. If Hahn is still here, Grifol will be here next year. Yeah. That is for sure. So it all depends on what happens there. I think if Hahn goes and Kenny stays, Grifol would be gone.
See, you're bringing that up, but do you legitimately believe there's any chance of any changes in the front office?
I think Hahn could go.
What makes you say that?
Hope.
All right, blind faith. We're at the blind faith.
Hope, and faith. I'm getting religious on this fucking podcast. I need Jesus with this fucking team. This team, maybe should I go to church? Maybe they'll be better. All right, Russ, let's play GM. Okay. How the fuck? Well, I guess we can include this in trade deadline, and this will kind of answer our next few topics too. How do you fix this? And you can get, I'll say this. Let's start. How about we both do this? We're both the GMs. We'll go back and forth, make our separate moves. What are you going into a full rebuild, or who are you keeping? I'll let you start.
Okay. Yeah.
You take over as the GM. You have coaching, like you have full reign. You're basically Theo Epstein, VP of Baseball Operations, and you're the GM.
Okay. Well,
how do you fix this?
You stole my first point, because I was going to say if I'm king tomorrow, I'm firing myself and hiring Theo Epstein and letting him take over. So thanks for stealing my first point there. Goodness, at the deadline. I mean, obviously, any kind of deadline stuff we're going to talk about. I think that what often gets lost in any kind of trade conversations is what's the return package. You know, everybody just said, you should trade this guy. You should trade this guy. You should trade. Well, we don't know what other teams are offering for these kind of guys. So I just want to kind of give that caveat to begin with. But like I said earlier, I think everybody is on the table besides Luis Robert Jr. You're finally getting what you asked for with Luis Robert Jr. He finally, granted the injury that happened during the Derby, but he finally looks healthy. He's played almost every game this season. That guy can survive a rebuild, so I'm keeping him. Besides that, I'm listening to offers on every single other guy. I'm praying to God that I could maybe get a top 100 prospect for Giolito. If Lynn can get you a couple of lower tier prospects, I'm certainly trading him. I'm listening to offers on Cease, because I know that he's not going to be a part of the next good White Sox team, because I think, like you touched on, he's a Boris guy, so he's going to be gone after these next 2 seasons anyways. I think that we've seen you'll get a lot more value with specific to Cease. You're going to get a lot more value in trading guys with a couple years of team control as opposed to just one or any kind of rental. So I'm certainly listening to offers on him. I'm listening to offers on the bullpen guys. And, outside of that, obviously Benintendi's going to stay. You're not going to trade Colas or, some of your other younger talent. But, Nick, I got to be honest, this thing is such a mess. I don't know how to fix this thing, but besides getting rid of the entire front office and starting over. I really don't. I wouldn't go into full rebuild mode. I don't think front offices make decisions necessarily based on what their fan base wants, but I don't think there's any appetite for another full rebuild. But I don't trust this front office to rebuild, to retool, to do pretty much anything at this point. So I know that's a really long-winded way of saying I don't know, but I don't fucking know.
I know if I'm in charge, the people that are staying, Vaughn, Robert, most likely Eloy. You had Moncada maybe at third next year.
For sure, because no one's trading for that contract.
I'm probably, if I can't throw TA in somewhere or something like that, I'll probably keep him at short. Keep Cease, Kopech, everyone else is gone. Graveman gone, Kelly gone. And out of that, what I'm hoping to do is find a couple of young arms that throw hard and find a catching prospect or two. Doesn't matter how good they are, just any catching prospects.
So let's think about it this way, because like I said, we know that you don't know what other teams are offering.
Right.
But if you're going to put all those other guys and say that they're all gone, what maybe positions and then what types of profiles of players are you looking to get back? And what levels are you looking to get back? Are you looking to get back single A high prospects, double A prospects? You looking to get major league ready guys? What are you looking to get?
I'm looking to get, so with catcher, I want 2 profiles. I want good defensively, patient at the plate. Doesn't matter if it's power, doesn't matter if it's contact, just good defensively, sees pitches. I want one guy who's been in AAA for a little bit and can probably go to the majors and start his career there. Like I said, doesn't have to be upper echelon, just can catch, learn a little bit on the fly. And then I want a guy, maybe this is where like a bigger package for a Cease or someone would come in, where you double A, been there for a little, but has tremendous upside.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm looking at catcher. It looks like the middle of the infield with Colson Montgomery and the kid they just drafted, that's going to be the future there. So From there, I'm looking at young arms. That's kind of been what they've been going after with Schultz and what's his name, who had Tommy John last year. They took, and then they just took this LSU guy. Those are 3 really good arms if they pan out. Like those are 3 guys who could be at the start, like a top of a rotation in 2025, 2020, maybe not 25, maybe probably 26, 27. Schultz maybe 25, but I'm looking for arms and I'm looking for catching.
Let me ask you this, though. We've seen with previous rebuilds and retools that building around young pitching is volatile. Would you rather try to build around young pitching, or would you rather try to build around some young position players?
Position players all day long. You're 100% right. And I think their outfield is set for the next 4 to 5 years with Benintendi, Robert, Colas.
Yeah.
So then you look to the middle infield. I would just keep stacking up the middle infield because you can teach one of those guys to play third base. If Yohan Moncada can fucking learn how to play third base, anyone can. And then maybe you take a chance on a first baseman too, or a guy with just a nice power hitting type player that doesn't get injured every 5 minutes, like Eloy. But if I'm the GM, I'm retooling on the fly because the division is so bad.
Yeah. I think that's fair, and I think you addressed some specific positions that you go after there, which I think is good. I think for me, I think about it less position-wise. Obviously, if you're thinking a faster retool, then you do have to look at it position-wise, as well as I'm looking at swing profile and approach at the plate. This is an overstatement, but I would not give a fuck if this team loses 100 games next year if they have the highest on-base percentage in the league. I am just so tired of watching the same approach at the plate all the time. They need to diversify the lineup. They need some guys who fucking walk. They need to get more left-handed. They continue to struggle against right-handed pitching. And so I'm trying to diversify my lineup a little bit going into next season.
Yeah, 100%. But like I said, man, we'll do a free agency pod, and so in the next few months we'll do a post trade deadline one, and then we'll do a postseason one, and then we'll see who has jobs, who doesn't. We can get a better idea of what they're going to go for. But again, I don't want to say the window with this team is not open, but the division window is open for the foreseeable future. You can even argue the next 5 years are open because nobody is there to take it. You have Robert, you have Benintendi, you have Colas, you maybe have Montgomery, and somewhere in that stretch, maybe it's a big stretch, but you find a defensive catcher next year. You get a young one in a trade that's, like I said, it's in AAA, maybe even high AA that can make that transition and be a backup and learn next year. Like, I don't know, but all I know is you can, with Cease and Kopech at the top, you're going to have 3 free agents, and the outfield's set, so you ignore that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Moncada's there. TA's there. Second's an issue. Maybe you fucking try and do something there. Maybe fucking Sosa starts the year at second because the guy's hit 20 homers. He's going to hit 20 homers in AAA again this year, and 100 at-bats in the majors is nothing. I don't care what anyone says. Ted Williams used to say you need 1,000 at-bats in the minors to be ready for the majors. Then you need 2,000 at-bats in the majors to make any sort of progress. So I don't know how true that is. I'm in a game where results need to be seen now, but maybe you just let Sosa play second next year and get a fucking older utility guy to come in and figure that out. I don't know, but I would try and retool on the fly with Vaughn, Eloy, Robert, Cease being those 4 guys that you kind of build around for a 2-year run. Build for a fucking 2-year run, that 24, 25. Then the worst case, it doesn't shake out. You're still going to have Benintendi, Robert, Colas in the outfield for the next 4 to 5 years. So you still have that. Let's say Moncada and TA leave. You add Colson Montgomery. Maybe that other guy comes up to the middle infield. And then all of a sudden you're young up the middle. You have Vaughn, maybe you don't. I don't know. I just try to retool on the fly. That's because I don't see them doing a rebuild with Jerry being alive, and I don't foresee Jerry dying anytime soon. And I don't wish that on anyone.
Of course not.
But that's what I do if I'm taking over GM. I'm wheeling and dealing. We're wheeling and dealing. We're getting these guys out of here. I would look to trade Eloy just because I don't ever believe he will be healthy for a full season.
Yeah,
I'd rather have like a good, solid like DH who's going to hit 20 bombs at least a year.
All fair points. I think that just want to emphasize your point about the division and maybe doing like a rebuild or retool on the fly, I should say. I think that that's a really good point but it's also the most frustrating thing. It's like the division the last 2 seasons and the fact that nobody has run away from you, like is almost like
dude. We're 16 games under and 8 games out, dude.
Yeah, that's so sad. The AL Central just needs to be blown to pieces. It's so bad.
So bad. And no one, like, Bieber's going to get traded at the deadline or this offseason for sure. Like, I don't know. And then I don't know how you piece together the rotation next year. That's a huge question mark. The bullpen you can piece together. You can always piece together a bullpen. You hope Liam's healthy. Middleton's under control for next year. Maybe if you don't trade him, and fucking let him be the setup guy. Like, I don't know. Like, but figure it the fuck out because the division's bad. And you would hope that the guy in charge right now is not the one figuring it out, but it will be. I think the ideal scenario for both of us is that somehow, some way, Jerry wakes up from his sleep. All that money coming up. There's a ton of money coming off the books. Like a ton. They won't even be near 200. Plus with their payroll, literally give Theo Epstein a blank check and say, hey, we're fucked. Come on, fuck us.
That's what I would do. I would give Theo Epstein a blank check and say, I don't care what you want to be paid. Come fix this shit.
Pay him 20. You're paying Moncada 25 next year. Give Theo 30, 40 a year. Give Theo 40 million a year. Take it out of the payroll. He doesn't need that much in the payroll.
Yep.
He would figure it out.
Pay Theo or pay us. I mean, one of the two.
Yeah, pay us. We'll fucking dude. We will wheel and deal the fuck out of people. I'll tell you that. I'll have Yaz in a new home we'll get a new fucking pop machine. He'll go play on he'll be the backup catcher on the Dodgers for the rest of the year or whoever fucking, who knows? The Diamondbacks could use Yaz, I'm sure. Why not? Yeah, some fucking Arizona. Just doesn't matter. But we kind of did deadline predictions and all that. How many losses does this team finish with?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, my friend.
I say 90 plus.
I said at the beginning of the year, you asked me for a season prediction.
I don't even want to know mine.
I said I could see 75 wins or I could see 95 wins. I think I was well off on the 95 possibility. Oh, God, I don't think they're 100 loss bad, but I don't know. 73 wins, 74 maybe. It's going to be bad, and they're just going to get worse, obviously. So
yeah, they're going to get way worse, and I think they're going to be worse than 16, which is fucking crazy.
It's so sad to think about.
So sad. And does Moncada come back?
At this point, why? If he's not healthy, why bring him back?
Just shut him down.
Just shut him down. Let Liam take all the time that he could possibly need. Nothing to rush anybody back for at this point. I don't need to see anybody play injured. If we have to see some, bumfuck minor league guys come up and play due to the lack of organizational depth, I really don't care at this point. Have guys try to get healthy for next season. That's so sad to say, considering with the All-Star break, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, like I said, there's going to be too many. Moncada's back, Anderson's back, Eloy's back. I just don't think you can. You have to kind of go for it again, at least in the first half, and then have a massive sell-off and hope that, hey, maybe Moncada's not terrible, and you can trade him, and then you can trade TA, and then if they don't show progress next year, and Hahn and Kenny are still in charge, it'd be insane. That's why I think something happens this year. Because you have, with the way they lock themselves in, you're not asking a guy to come in and start from scratch. You're acting a guy to move pieces around with Robert Kalas and at least Benintendi with that outfield, and then Cease and Kopech at the top, and make this a team that can win the AL Central the next 2 years. And I don't know how that happens. And that's why you pay someone a lot smarter than me. But it's very obvious the guys there are not smarter than either of us. And this is why we're having this conversation, which, Russ, it sucks. I don't have much more else to say. Are there any closing thoughts you have on? I mean, it's going to be. I'm actually glad the trade deadline's in a few weeks because it's like, at least if they get like this catcher who's like ready to come up, or someone who maybe can play in the majors, or at least we can follow him in the minors. Like, at least there's some closer destination we're going to, or we'll get more insight. Hopefully Han will be more transparent, or maybe Jerry fires Han tomorrow. I don't know. But I just don't know what else can be said at this point because it is such a fucking mess.
Well put, man. I got nothing else. It's a clusterfuck. It sucks. Sucks all the way around. They've broken my spirit, and I'm going to continue to watch only because they call it Die Hard for a reason.
Yeah, I literally watch because it's fucking like a second nature to put a Sox game on when it is on. And we got the Braves and Mets coming up after the All-Star break, so it is going to get real fucking ugly.
Over under Matt Olson homers in the series, I'll set at 5.
4. Oh, 5? Yeah, I'll take that.
Oh, yeah.
He's on my fantasy team, so I'm ready. Yeah. Ready for Matty Olson. But appreciate it all, Sox fans. That was for you. Terrible season. I think the only light at the end of the tunnel right now is that we are inching day by day. We're inching closer to the trade deadline and closer to getting some answers on what's going to happen with the future of this club in the next season and beyond, which is really the only thing we can look forward to now. So for Russ, for me, we appreciate you listening. We will see you next time.